Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. My name is Corey Olsen, joined as always by my co-host Maggie Parke. And today we are going to be discussing several things. We got a bunch of stuff going on. We've not been able to do a show for a few weeks now, and so we've got a bunch of things. We woke up to a new trailer, or as I've been calling it, the meta teaser. Because it's a teaser video, which at the end proves itself to be a teaser video for another teaser, which is coming out at a later time. So it's a meta teaser, but it's kind of fun. So we're gonna look at that. Of course, that just dropped today, so now seems a good time to talk about that. And then we're gonna have some special guests later on. We're gonna be joined by several awesome folks from TikTok, from the Tolkien world in TikTok, which has been a new thing that I've been recently exposed to, and looking forward
kind
to.
Of dragged us in willingly, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. We'll introduce you to the folks who convinced me, and not only convinced me, but helped me, like they were helping their grandpa, set up a TikTok account. So anyway, we're gonna. Yeah,
and still helped us. They asked me today, like, about some streaming thing, and I was like, "Can you tag us?"
That's right. How does this work? Yeah, we don't really know. Yeah, exactly.
So they'll join us the end of this hour.
Yeah, exactly. So here's what we're gonna do. So let's watch through the trailer. It's a minute long. I've got it here on my desktop, and then we'll see. So first of all, the lettering. Right. What do you make of this? It's looking to me like artifacts from like stone, like a ruin is kind of what it's looking like. It looks like trailing ivy or something, like it might be made in a detail on a stone carving. I haven't seen this.
Oh, see, I almost wonder if it's
before.
The lighting of my screen too, because I thought it was like a tarnished silver.
It might be, yeah, yeah. The upper ones look a little bit more like stone to me. The bottom one, certainly, the swoop, looks more like metal. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what they're going for there, but some kind of carven artifact is what they're going for here, which is interesting. Okay, here we go. Let's watch it through, and we're assuming people have seen this before, so we might make some commentary as we go through here.
We'll try to stay quiet for the first viewing and then talk about it.
Well, there's very little talk, so that's okay.
The
skies are strange.
In fact, I think that's it. Okay, so we've got the through line of the meteor. We've got Galadriel on the swan ship with the seabirds. It's a gorgeous scene. Okay, right. We've got Prince Durin, right? Celebrimbor and Elrond. Arondir, whose name I will attempt to remember. That's Arondir again. This is probably Tarmiriel. Ents. Totally Ents. And then, boom. Oh, yeah. And there's the teaser for which we are being teased. Okay. Okay, yeah. So this is on, for those of you who haven't seen this yet, this is on Prime Video. So they did not drop this on their YouTube page. But let me see. I love QuickTime, where I can kind of do very slow frame by frame advances and get things. So we start off. Okay, hang on. Do you want to do your overview first, and I'll do commentary as we go?
Sure, yeah, because I don't have a ton, so let's just do first impressions, and then we can kind of dig through.
All right.
Filmically, I think it's beautiful. This was the first thing to come from them that I got genuinely fangirl excited about, and the building, the music, the tension, the through line of that fireball is just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. You get
Yeah.
wrapped up in it. And then,
Yeah.
second and third viewing, you start asking questions like, what's that? What's that? What's that? Was that an Ent child? Is that a small?
Right.
There's so many things I start getting excited about. Visually and filmically, I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. We have that comet traveling from left to right. There's definitely a play with colors and light, but it's very short, it's very quick. No frame is held longer than 3 seconds except for the line, because they have words to say, so that's about 5 seconds. So most of them are 2 to 3 seconds long, so it's very quick. And the purpose of that is just kind of move us along. It's a teaser of a teaser. They do show all the different worlds. They cover all the major characters that we're going to be introduced to. A couple of new faces in there that we haven't really seen yet, so that was exciting. I did notice, camera-wise, there was only one shot that pulled back. Every single shot went in.
Zooming in. Interesting.
Yeah, and the only one that pulled back was the one of the elven tree with the lanterns going up. I'm not sure of the significance of that, but it's the only one that we zoomed out. So yeah, I don't know if we can figure out some meaning in there, but
yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. So the
filmically, I mean, I don't think it tells us a lot in terms of like visual storytelling, but what it does show us, I think, is really excellent. And it's just that pace. I mean, this is clearly just to get us engaged and to get us excited and to show us a boatload of stuff, because it's a teaser of a teaser.
Well, and it's interesting to me because I couldn't help but think about what the showrunners told us about season 1, right? When we were talking about season 1, and they were talking about how season 1 is designed to kind of ground us in the world, get us invested in what's happening, and introduce us to all the characters, get us and help us to understand why, like, bad stuff is going to happen, like big traumatic events are going to happen. Why should we care, right?
Yeah, to make us care. Yeah,
exactly. And this trailer really reminded me of that, as it it gives us this sort of survey with the meteor as the through line, right? Everybody's looking up at this, so and I love the way that it connects everything, right? Everybody is concerned about this event, right? Whatever it is, of course we still don't know, but it helps us to show how everybody is connected. Everybody's looking up, right?
And it also makes the world really small, because we know this is not a small world, but it's the same kind of idea. Like, I remember when I was a little child and I moved cross country for my best friend, and we're like, look up at the moon, it's the same moon,
Right.
But it was the kind of that idea of like, they're all over Middle Earth, and they're looking at the same thing and feeling the same sense of strangeness and otherness, and just this kind of unifying thing against the other that is very powerful in that. That sense of unification, I think, is also a really important effect of this. It doesn't just show us like a pastiche of like, here are the 4 or 5 different like worlds or kingdoms. Implicitly, all of them are bound together, right? They're all kind of shoulder to shoulder, all looking up at the sky, at that thing that's happening. Yeah. And nobody's looking at it and going, yes, I know what that is. Everyone's kind of like, what?
Yes. It's a confusing thing to everybody. So I like the way that we start from what is just a shot of purely desolate wilderness. We get very few cues as to where exactly this could be, right? But we start with, the mist, sort of coming through the mist, fading into this, and then we get this other brief shot of a very rugged looking kingdom, but now we've got buildings, right? And based on what we've been told, this is in Harad that we're seeing. We're seeing a place in Harad here, this tower. From the look of the construction, if you look at this wall, it looks like a ruin. Not the tower itself, but this sort of curtain wall around the tower here, around the base, it looks, at the very least, very worn. We're looking at a very old civilization, and that's really interesting. Think about really old civilization in the Second Age. It really does suggest, if this is Harad, as has been reported, that what they are going to show us is sort of the roots of the old kingdom, the culture of Harad, the pre-Sauron corruption culture of Harad. And that's really interesting. It is greener and more mountainous than I imagine Harad as well, praise, but I think that that's interesting because Of course, Harad is enormous and presumably varied, right? I mean, I do assume there are probably some, desert regions in Harad. We're sort of led to understand that, and I suppose that there will be. But especially down in the coastal areas, there are certainly going to be greener bits and also mountainous bits. So, I agree. Alex, that big mountain in the back, right, that looks like it might be a volcano or something, is really interesting, right? Is this, could we actually be getting, I mean, I don't think this could be a mountain that we know. I wouldn't think. That is, I wouldn't think this is like, Mount Doom with the Ash Mountains in front of it or something like that. But it would be very, very northern Harad if that were the case, right? I wouldn't think so. But anyway, that is a very intriguing mountain in the distance, and I don't really know. JJ is pointing out that in Sam's Oliphant poem, the poem mentions that trees crack as I pass. So presumably there must be greenery down in Harad as well, or at least based on Hobbit tradition. So that's true. That is true enough. Okay, but then we cut immediately from there to, I always want to, I want this to continue. I want to see down into the valley, and I keep getting the brow of the Brandyfoot instead here. But
you'll get that in the teaser.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we have, and this is the edge of the book, right? So we're looking at him looking at the book, and then we're going to flip around and see the book, right?
Well, the whole book thing I thought was really interesting, because I would not attach the book to the Harfoots. Mm-hmm. And to see, I mean, if you freeze on that image, it looks like there's star charts, and it looks like you can see the man falling in this star chart.
Yes.
Right?
It does look like a star chart. And not just a star chart, not just like here's a constellation. It looks like, like a calculation of the ecliptic, like that kind.
But like the third or fourth dot has arms and legs, right? Yeah.
Oh, so you like that's so it's showing his.
I don't know. Is it showing?
Or maybe a prophecy of a anthropomorphic comment.
Like a terrible stick figure, but
yeah, no, that's well. I mean, yeah, it's definitely different from the other stars, which are just little crosses. Interesting. But yeah, it looks to me. So again, look at the text that we have on the left-hand side, right? And the text itself looks vaguely pictographic. So I think designed to be a very old, script. But I agree with you about being surprised about this kind of association of lore with. With the Harfoots. And that's a really interesting point. On the one hand, it's not totally out of character. I mean, of course, with the Harfoots, obviously, to some extent, we can't help but think about modern hobbits, but we're way, way far removed from modern hobbits, right? We're like thousands of years removed from modern hobbits. So we have to be very cautious simply projecting back onto the Harfoots our expectations from modern hobbits, but at the same time, there are some interesting connections as well. Like, hobbits are bookish, comparatively bookish people. They like to have things written down fair and square, right? Especially family histories we know later on.
And we did have that picture from, was it Empire? Last time
scrolls?
With the scrolls and the desk, the cart that turned into like a roll top desk.
Yeah, like the traveling desk. Yeah. And Storyteller, I agree. I like Sadoc's accent too. I think they're doing some interesting work there.
It felt very like West Country, and I was actually talking to Dr. Gabriel Schenk, who's one of our faculty at Signum, and he was saying that it feels very like tying it to the earth, that it makes it feel very familiar and almost agricultural and just that kind of comfy, cozy home comforts. I'm like, yeah, the West Country is a bit like that, just nice and cozy.
Yeah. No, it was very interesting. I did like that a lot. So I hear somebody was saying it looks like, yeah, Curious Gene was saying this, they look like constellations, and I agree. It's not that I don't agree with that, but the lines with the commentary, so you've got text, you've got lines, you've got that diagram up at the top, which I do not think is a constellation, because we don't see the crosses up there. The crosses are down on the right-hand side, and those lines... those look to me like like diagrams and like notes, like glosses and commentaries and explanations and things like that, with a title across the top. Notice the way that there's the text on the curved line as well, which seems to be a label. What it reminds me of, I'm thinking of old manuscript stuff. Think of like medieval manuscripts when people have like the little scrolls coming out of their mouths, right? To show like that's how they do. That's how they'll either attach a name to somebody, or they'll attach by having a little floaty scroll next to them, or they'll actually like do showing dialogue essentially by showing a little scroll coming out of their mouth. The way that just like a little line of text will be kind of attached to things in order to explain, like those diagonal lines look like a kind of gloss on whatever this central character is here, right? Which is kind of explaining this. And then these are notes, glosses that explain that. And then you've got a label that looks like a label for whatever this curved line is, which is supposed to be kind of going through. So it looks to me like, I don't know if it's meant to be prophecy or if it's some kind of like, like, there have been observations before, right? Of we're expecting something strange to happen in the heavens as a result of our explanations. I kind of love this. I
love this as a prop.
That they're depicting the Harfoots not just as ignorant savages, but as bookish, as literate, for one, which is intriguing because they needn't be. Clearly, like from their lifestyle, it does not look like they need writing, but they have it. Where did they get it? Writing is a question that I want to know. But then also, that they're wandering nomadic peoples can be very good observational astronomers, right?
Yeah,
so like, this kind of thing. Is and of course, like people who are out traveling by the stars in a completely unlit environment are very likely to be very familiar with the stars and very likely to notice if something changes, right? If there's some kind of astral phenomenon. But anyway, so I think that's really interesting. Cool. Brett, originally when I saw the original pictures, like the picture of Sedok here holding the scroll, which we saw in the hands picture way back when, I was willing to think or suspect that there was a found artifact thing there, but I don't believe that anymore. From the pictures we've seen, this looks like a literate culture. That there, who knows? Maybe there is some kind of found element that helps to explain where their writing came from, right? But I don't think, I do not think this is an unlettered culture that has found a book and is trying to figure out what to do with it. Increasingly, remember we saw that whole like bookcase of little scrolls in there, So these are, I think, clearly theirs. Yeah. Anyway, so I thought that was all very cool. And of course, notice the place that this has in the entire trailer, right? That is, Sedek's the only guy who talks, right? So he's the one that we get commentary on this, and his commentary is about, I like observe / anticipate strangeness in the skies, right? So
and attaching that line to this imagery, to the connection, like the through line of that, those three things put together. If we see him, we see the book, we hear the line, it very much puts him as the authority figure,
right?
I believe him as the scholar of like, ooh, he knows what he's talking about, this is strange,
right? And he is the first one to look up. He's the first person we get, right? But when he looks up here after saying the skies are strange, now everyone's looking up. Everyone's following his gaze, basically, for the rest of this trailer, right? And that, again, that's very interesting. And now we get the meteor.
Yeah.
and the familiar Gilgalad picture.
Looking very intense.
Yes, very intensely following. Okay, now one of my favorite images. Okay, what I'm looking at the star on the sail of the ship.
Ooh.
Does that look like an 8-pointed star to anybody? I think it does look like an 8-pointed star. And there's lesser stars around it, I think.
Oh, it's so hard to see.
Yeah, we don't get back to it here. Just the swan ship with all of the seabirds. The birds are definitely not swans.
It looks like they're going to a baptism or something.
Their dress is very, especially like when we get Galadriel here, right? Mm-hmm. This is very much not warlike Galadriel, right? So we don't get Galadriel in her armor.
We get
this
clean,
could just be, clean, peaceful.
Or innocent, yeah.
Peaceful and or innocent. Surrounded by the birds. I think, I see, Sana Alicia, I think that the all-white costuming here, it's clearly a thing. Like, this is they've all dressed alike on purpose for this occasion, whatever this is. And I don't know exactly what this is. But I don't think this is just like, they're like, Sana Alicia, I'm not accusing you of this, but again, I find people are so quick to want to find fault that they're not like willing to stop and think, like basically to say like, oh, I think the costumes are worse than, the Peter Jackson costumes and stuff, without saying like, hang on, like we don't know the context of any of this yet. And
I'm with Bookworm here. It's almost ceremonial looking.
Yes, it does look ceremonial to me. Like they've clearly all dressed.
It really looks like they're together on this fancy boat on still
and they're
water.
Standing in like formation. Look, you can see it from above. If we go back, look,
and even the way the birds
are
moving.
Yeah, the elves are all standing in formation on the ship.
Yeah. Even the way the birds are moving, what I was going to say is that it just feels like they knew something was going to happen, and the animals feel it, and the world is reacting, and they're here to witness it. It feels religious.
Yeah, there is a kind of reverent feel for sure to this, and I love the way the kind of the contrast between all of the like the simplicity and straight lines of like the elves standing there in rows, right, or in columns, I guess, right, and not moving, right, and then you get the motion of the birds, right, and the circular swirl of the birds around them, and it's all whites, right. We don't know whether the sun is rising or setting. It looks like the sun is ahead of them, but we don't know which direction it's going. It's possible this is some kind of Valinor flashback. I'm inclined to imagine that the birds, I suspect the birds are a Numenor reference. Because we're told specifically, one of the things we're told in the description of the island of Numenor, and please don't anybody tell me, oh, but they don't have rights to unfinished tales. That's not how rights work. Like, they get permission for all the stuff that they do. To have rights to a work just means that you have the ability to tell the primary stories from that volume. Right, so they couldn't tell, for instance, the story of Aldarion and Arendis if they'd have to purchase rights to unfinished tales for that. That doesn't mean you can't make references to anything that's in that text. You just have to have permission for that. Like, it has to be approved for them to do that. And they got approval for all these things that they did. Anyway, okay, so the birds, but like one of the iconic things about the island of Numenor is that it's surrounded by multitudes and multitudes of seabirds, which come and flock around the ships and follow the ships as they go, sometimes following the ships all the way to Middle-earth. So the way in which we seem to be getting It looks like the birds are swirling around them, but maybe like descending on them, going before them. It looks like so if I had to guess, I'm guessing these elves are sailing to Numenor. And visiting Numenor, and this is like their first sight. What we're seeing reflected in Galadriel's face here is her first sight of Numenor. I think is my guess as to what we're seeing, and that they're being basically kind of welcomed by the birds. And
you don't think it has anything to do with the comet, Meteor Man?
I don't actually. It's possible, but I don't. And the reason I don't is the sky is so different. If you look at the sky, both in the background of this scene, and we don't really see the sky, but even the reflection of the sky we can see in the water here, right? There are clouds, right? But look at that. I mean, it's all golden and everything, and then we get the darkness and grayness with the light. I think that the transition there is just kind of a play, essentially, for the trailer, because we track Galadriel's eyes up and then we're looking right at the comet again, right? See, Calerio, I'm not sure I agree with you that it would be weird to wear a nightgown to visit a neighboring kingdom. It depends on what you're going for, right? What those robes that they're wearing are, is like simplicity, right? And there could be lots of reasons. Again, it's clearly a deliberate choice, right? It's clearly a deliberate choice on their part. As they say, they're in these ceremonial lines.
I mean, it could be a holiday that we don't know about, and this is what you wear, and they're going to explain that lore to us. So I think it's really interesting, but I hope there's an explanation, and it's not just we're going to, linen, so we went for this.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the kind of thing that, like, it's going to have to be proven to me that they're just, like, being cheap and cutting corners. Like, I see no reason to believe that they're being cheap and cutting corners, and I mean creatively cutting corners, right? Like that they're just being like, whatever, just put them in white, like it doesn't matter. Like, no, like they're thinking about it. Yeah, they're thinking about it. I mean, like, this is a choice. This is a decision that they've made to put them in these simple things, and I could see that. Like, there could be a reason. Like, one option, if you're going to Numenor, one option would be to appear in, like, gorgeous, your most gorgeous and extravagant attire. It is not, to me, obvious that that's the only way in which you would want to appear when you're going to Numenor. Who knows whom they're going to and why as well, Anyway, so it's intriguing, and of course, again, the point is I don't know. It is like pilgrimage attire, Diomedia. That sounds like an interesting possibility. Also, remember, as far as we know, the entire season is taking place within the lifetime of Ar-Pharazôn and the rule of Ar-Pharazôn. Ar-Pharazôn is king, I think, from the start of this show. So there might be other reasons why you would not want to show up in your most gorgeous attire, even if you were appearing to Ar-Pharazôn. There could be a number of different kind of political and or moral points that you wanted to make to Ar-Pharazôn if you were appearing to them. I don't know. I've seen no evidence for Tar Palantir, Fruit Chew, but yeah, I've seen no evidence of Tar Palantir. I'm still, like, a little bit kind of hoping to get Tar Palantir, like, even on his deathbed at the end, as an introduction to Muriel's character. But we'll see. Yeah, so again, the thing that I'm totally not willing to do, or really just the thing that I sort of refuse to listen to, is people who look at this scene and say, see, look, the costuming obviously sucks. Like, they're not even trying with the costuming. They're just putting them in these white sacks. Like, yeah, they've put them in white sacks, but why? Like, they have a reason. You might not end up liking it, but I know there's a reason, and I'll be interested to see what it is. It's possible, Fabrizio, that it's oh, sorry, and Aaron is talking about that too. That there could be a flashback thing. I don't believe in the crowning of Elros. I don't think Elros is gonna. I'll be surprised if Elros appears. I don't. I think we're clearly going to get a. I mean, we might get multiple layers of flashback. We know we're getting a flashback to the first age, right? Are we going to get a flashback to the beginning of the second age? And could this be that? Could they be attending the crowning of Elros or something like that? It's possible. It's possible. But I'm not sure I believe in that. Is all I'm saying. Okay, so. One thing that interests me here is that the comet is going really far across the screen. Like we get we don't just get like a little bit of the comet. We get this sense of distance, right? Of like every time we see it, it travels a whole big chunk. Now we've got Durin looking up. I'm not convinced he's actually looking at the comet either, right here. But again,
that's just clever editing.
The teaser creates this effect.
It makes us feel that way, but yeah.
Right. The look on his face does not look like I'm looking at a bizarre astronomical phenomenon to me.
And the glow on his face makes it look like he's looking at a torch.
Firelight. Yeah, the light, exactly. The lighting doesn't match.
But in terms of telling the story, it helps us track that
exactly.
comment.
I love the way that they're bringing that. Like Galadriel looking up, Durin here looking up. Do clearly put that all into the story. I apologize for the squeaks of my puppy under the desk here. Yes, I apologize. My puppy is making her presence known. Okay, now we have who's that? Who's the long-haired one? This is Elrond and Gilgalad?
It has to be.
That's definitely Elrond.
Oh, so yeah, I said that's definitely Gilgalad. So yeah, it must be Elrond and Gilgalad.
Yeah, that's definitely. So this is Elrond and Gilgalad.
Yeah.
And so this is in Lindon.
And that's the only shot that's the pull back, which I was like,
Oh, this one. Wait. Hang on. Actually, I keep going back and forth, so I'm losing who's going out and who's going in.
25 seconds.
Okay. Right. We're going out from this. That's interesting. That is interesting. Going out from Lindon, right?
I mean, that's not an accident. The only way it could be an accident is if they were editing this together to make sure they had that tracking shot. But that's not a tracking shot following eyes in the sky. So like, that sounds really, I don't know, jarring to have something separate like that.
Yeah. Now here, this I think clearly is following the comet, right? The sky looks right. The lighting looks right. They're all looking at the same thing. Interesting that we have Elrond.
Well choreographed. It was like a cat toy, right?
Yeah, it really does look like a cat toy shot. I like how Elrond is in the foreground with Celebrimbor in the background here. Celebrimbor only a little bit more prominent than the guards behind, but Elrond is really the focal point. And I think that's interesting. It's in a sense almost like a coincidence, like he's clearly less important than Celebrimbor, I think. But the way that the shot puts him in prominence, which I think is really interesting. Yeah.
I'm watching the tracking because I think they're also watching it from the opposite direction for everybody else, aren't they? Because they're zooming in and they're going.
Oh, they're watching it like it's going from right to left. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. They're also facing the other side of it, so that also shows distance, because it just shows perspective is different.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Amarvan, I'm going to say a controversial thing. I totally do not miss and am not going to miss Hugo Weaving's Elrond. I have to admit, I did not love the casting of Hugo Weaving. I like him as an actor. I think he did an okay job, but I never loved Hugo Weaving's Elrond. I know that sounds like blasphemy to people who love the Peter Jackson films, but I never liked that casting. I never really loved Hugo Weaving as Elrond at all. So I am like aggressively interested in the new Elrond, actually. Sorry, a little confession there.
I'm firmly of the camp of each their own, so I don't mind if you don't like Elrond. I'm glad you're open-minded to this Elrond. Great.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, TikTokers are joining us in a minute, so I don't know.
Okay,
if you want to ask them to hang on for a few minutes.
All right, let's move through here. Okay, so we've got Arondir and presumably Bronwyn there, and then them kind of tentatively taking his hand.
Nice. I like that little moment.
This moment has a very this moment has a very Faramir and Eowyn on the walls of Minas Tirith kind of vibe to it, of like watching something, you know, uncertain and possibly disastrous happening. And praise exactly. Hugo Weaving never felt kind as summer. That's what I kept wanting. Kind as summer or kind as Christmas, depending on the edition of The Hobbit. And I always had Hobbit Elrond too prominently in my mind. But to enjoy, that is, Hugo Weaving's Elrond. I appreciate it in some ways, but okay. This, I understand, is Arondir again, here on this tower, down here in Harad. And now I get to see into the valley a little bit, which is fun. I'm trying to decide whether I think that's a river or canal. I think it's a river. But love this idea. We've got these rugged mountains, and we've got this land here between the mountains, and I think perhaps the sea off to the left there, like beyond through the tower. I think we get a little ocean over there. Anyway, yeah. Okay. Here's the big reveal of a new character. Which I think is Tarmiriel. Which I think that's great.
Yeah, good reveal for her.
Yeah.
And then I love this next shot of the comet too. It's speeding up. It's getting lower. It's getting a lot more threatening.
Yes, all the way across the sky, and then of course the Ents, and that really looks like an Enting, doesn't it?
Right. I didn't notice that. That was my husband, so fair credit to him. I was like, no.
I think it's a baby Ent, because we've got clearly Entish motion framing these, you know, here like on the edges, right? And then
almost like a reaching up of this child's hand, right? Like, what's that, mommy?
Yeah.
That's so sweet.
Absolutely. It could be. Well, the two Ents, two full-grown Ents, look a little. They look a little similar. So I don't think that's an Ent and an Entwife. But oh man, so good. I love the Ents. I love everything we've seen of the Ents so far. Really excited to get some Entish involvement, and I'm wondering where they are. The reason I'm not sure if we're seeing an Entwife is that, well, I don't know my trees well enough. That is the Entwives. The one on the right is very curvy, and by curvy I don't mean like curvy like hips and breasts kind of curvy. I mean curvy in the sense of like stooped over, which is what I would expect of an Entwife. Not a tall forest tree, but a smaller orchard tree bent over with her labors. That's how they're described. So this curvature to the trunk could possibly, these could both be Entwives, conceivably. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. And then we get Nori and the boom of the landing of the comet, and that's it. Okay, no, that's not it, because this is it. Little glimpse into Numenor. Yeah, big city
it feels like
in
you're
there.
Peeking behind the curtain, doesn't it? Just a little reveal. You can see the ship. I don't know if that's the same ship from the previous scene, but
it's not. The sails are quite different. Sails and masts are quite different. Yeah. So I think that's presumably a Numenorian thing. And then we got two faces in the rock, right? One on the left and one on the right, looking across. That's a really fun way to remember I wonder if... okay. I'll make a wild guess. Well, it's not a guess in the sense that I think it's what it is. But what I would do with the faces there facing the ships as they come in, I would have those be former captains of the Guild of Venturers. Is what I would say those are. Where are the birds? There's some birds. See, there's birds. There's birds. We got birds here. And there's... No, I think those are pennants. Yeah, there need to be some more birds around the ship there, but... Oh, yeah, there's another face. There's a face up here, too. So we got faces on the right and left staggering all the way in. So, yep. Okay. Well, there we go.
So
and what's
you go.
today's
We got
date?
a
Today's
teaser
the
of a
6th. So we got a teaser for a teaser and another teaser that's coming out on the 14th, right? And lots of news about big stuff happening at Comic-Con. I am going to be at Comic-Con. No, I'm not being flown out to Comic-Con. I'm going out my own self, but I was invited to participate out there, so I'm looking forward to seeing Comic-Con. But let's have our guests join us at last.
Yeah.
Having made them wait a really long time.
5 minutes is pretty quick for us, so
It is relatively quick. Okay, so we're bringing in Don Marshall and Emily Elizabeth and Annex Wilson from TikTok. And they can join us here. We're already live. So here's Emily. Hi, Emily. And Annex, good to see you.
Hi.
And then we've got Don as well here at some point. There we go.
Is this thing on? Hello?
Here we are. Very good.
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
How are you guys doing?
Doing good. This is like a
Doing
little
all right, yeah.
reunion.
Yeah, this is a fun reunion.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Welcome. So we've just been, as you might have seen, we've just been looking through today's
Have you
meta
heard
teaser
there's a new trailer?
thing, the new trailer thing. Yeah, I thought you guys might have heard of it. So we were just looking, making some comments there. What were your reactions to that today? What were your thoughts on the new little trailer there?
Ellie? Or Annex, yeah.
I thought it's sort of like reminiscent of what we saw at the event as well, and it's visually spectacular. Like you can see there's been money spent on this, and it looks good.
Yeah.
And now I just want to see the story and like what's actually going to happen.
Oh man, I know that's what I keep. I keep just pining for, is I'm glad to see visuals. It's fun seeing characters and everything, but everything I see, I'm just like, okay, yeah, but like, what's happening? Like, what's the story? And we've got nothing meaty enough to really be able to kind of sink into with. I mean, there's some things we can kind of vaguely speculate, but there's little enough. So I agree. Totally looking forward to more story. Emily, what were your thoughts?
It was like a lot of stuff we'd seen, and I like when they kind of sprinkle in like a new character, I like that there was a little bit of dialogue. We saw somebody speaking.
Right.
But yeah, obviously I'm excited. I think it looks really good. I'm glad that they keep kind of sprinkling in, and I'm interested about this new July 14th date.
Yes.
What else is happening?
A new trailer, which maybe will show some real new stuff, which will be cool.
Story? Conflict?
Yeah.
How about you, Don?
I loved this just from from a very real standpoint. I know we didn't get like a lot of new stuff. Like there's the Tarmiriel, and then there's the amazing shots of the different characters. But like for me, it was the landscape shots that was just like, the boat with the water, and then the tower that we saw from the other thing a few weeks ago. Just I said this at the London event in front of all of you. It very much feels like we are back in Middle Earth, and that's very exciting. That's very exciting. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, so we wanted to talk a little bit about, of course, the whole Tolkien scene in TikTok was a thing that was new to me, and that was one of the things I really enjoyed, meeting you guys and getting sort of tutorials from you guys. I would love to, and I think that a lot of people who don't use TikTok don't really have any idea of sort of what that community is like and what the sort of the culture of, of these kinds of fandoms are. And, you guys have been, really at the heart of what's going on with Tolkien stuff and, on TikTok here for a while. Would love to hear your impressions about sort of how that has grown, what you guys have seen happening in sort of in the TikTok world, in fandom generally, Tolkien fandom in particular. Love to hear your kind of thoughts and reflections on the what may be a short history, but sort of the history of Tolkien fandom on TikTok. What do you think?
I'm down for it.
And if you can also bring in, I'd be curious, did you know this community before you joined it, or were you a part of it and then kind of organically grew into this community? Because I want to know your origin stories too.
My story is fairly filled with alcohol and poor decisions that got very lucky. So Emily and Alex go first. Don't want to ruin the fire.
I feel like I might have been on TikTok the longest. I started at the beginning of the pandemic, with most people did. I feel like that's when TikTok kind of transitioned from this dumb dancing, lip syncing kind of app to where more people were joining. It was becoming more mainstream and less like a joke thing. And I feel like that's when, actual discourse started happening and people started using it as a way to disseminate information, especially young people. So I actually started off doing Star Wars content, so I definitely did not know that this would be my niche. But
you've gone viral for some Star Wars content as well.
It was kind of crazy how it all happened. It was just mostly memes and stuff, and then Star Wars community kind of died down a little when the shows were in a hiatus, and I was like, what else do I know about? And what is not so oversaturated? Because Star Wars, was very, very oversaturated on TikTok, and I was like, oh, Lord of the Rings. I haven't seen too much Lord of the Rings content, and so I started liking stuff. I started making stuff and kind of finding people, and obviously that's when I found Dawn. And I just started noticing that there was this little community. So it's kind of been nice to organically find that and kind of accidentally almost find that community. But it is a really great community on TikTok. I feel like one of the smaller but still very powerful, obviously, kind of fandoms on there.
Yeah, interesting. Annex, what's your story?
I wasn't on TikTok when the pandemic started. I think it was sort of a year into the pandemic, when I downloaded it one Christmas break when I was just bored, and I wasn't making stuff for a long time. And then I think it was around the summer when I started making it, but it wasn't Lord of the Rings. It was more generally about books and specifically fantasy books, because I read a lot of different fantasy, and so I was talking about Brandon Sanderson, Wheel of Time, Terry Pratchett sort of books. And then I sort of stumbled into Lord of the Rings because sort of people were asking questions, and I was like, oh, I know the answer to that question.
Right.
It sort of happened in
Why
New Year
didn't they just take
asked,
the Eagles to Mordor?
For instance, just to throw out a question,
Your response
every comment
to that,
section.
though, Don.
Every
so
comment
good.
section. There were 95 pages. There were 95 pages of answers for that question.
Yeah.
Which is impressive.
More than that.
It was why did the One Ring make you invisible? And there was a couple theories, and I was like, oh, I know the answer to this one. And so I just made a video, and people liked it, and I was like, I need to do more of this. I know some stuff, and I could talk about it. And then it built a really lovely community. And I don't know, I don't know if it's just my experience on TikTok, but I find that it's more people who haven't read all the books but have seen the movies and love the films, and so what they're looking for is more detail on the films. And they're sometimes they don't read a lot, or sometimes they just don't have time to read, so they're I want to know more about Aragorn, but I don't have time to read all the books. Can you tell me? And then that's sort of what fun to do, and it makes people enjoy the books more, and sometimes makes them start reading it, which is great.
Yeah, I've noticed. I mean, it's one of the trends that I've noticed on Tolkien TikTok in general, that there's a lot of. I mean, there's a lot of that kind of content. Like, here's the 1 minute explanation of this thing, right? Whether it's a character or whether it's, you know, an incident or something like that. That there seems to be a lot of interest in folks. So the conclusion I was drawing from looking at that is that there are a lot of people who are engaged, who are interested in the topic, but in a very kind of beginner sort of way, like first interest in this, you know, not like I am dedicated deep diver into this lore and I want to talk about it, but that they're really, you guys all seem to be connecting a lot with people who are, you know, sort of not necessarily Lord of the Rings deep fans, but like Lord of the Rings curious people, essentially.
Yeah, that's a great way to describe it.
So yeah, and that's, I think, some really interesting work that you guys are doing for that.
And I have to say, like, I feel like your audience, to be honest, because as we know, Corey's got the lore in this discussion, and I can't tell me more. So I feel very much like the kind of person that would be asking you guys questions. And then you get these beautifully made, succinct answers in lovely videos that are quite comical and accessible and, I don't know, artistic, that the platform and your knowledge together, I think, just shows such an excellent mode for creativity. So it's, yeah, I just fangirled at you, but that's pretty much what I feel about. I feel like your audience, and I'm glad I get 3-minute answers, so thanks.
Yeah.
It really is, though. I've been fortunate enough that so many people, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm answering the same 15 questions over and over again, but getting all of these people that genuinely feel excited to learn more about a thing that I find, and we all find, I think, so exciting, is really nice.
Yeah.
I just feel comfortable to ask the question, because some spaces in our fandom, you're not able to ask a dumb question because it'd be torn apart. Whereas I get the feeling at TikTok that it feels like a very friendly place.
As much as it can be. I mean, I think I might be bearing the brunt of the, and I know, Annex, you've gone viral a few times for Rings of Power content, but there is definitely a side of Lord of the Rings fans that are very, also, forgive the thing, my cat just bit me many times today. It was a weird morning. Because I know I'm going to get in chat. What's wrong with his hand? I'm fine, thank you. But no, I have found for the most part, there have been incredibly friendly, welcoming.
Yeah. And I feel like, as opposed to as what I've seen on like YouTube and Twitter and like especially Facebook and stuff like that, you do get the sort of toxic fandom where, you know, sometimes you get ridiculed for like asking a question. But I find that you can, because it's so personalized, right? Because the For You page is so much like for you, that usually your content ends up in places where people aren't like that. And so the majority of your audience who sees those comments from the toxic fans will just shut that down and be like, no, this is not acceptable here. And so it does tend to create, I think, a much more positive community if that's what you're aiming for. Like, the platform lets you do that.
Yeah. It's this actually, to me, is the wildest thing about TikTok. And I love hearing you guys talk about the algorithm, which, like, when we talk about the algorithm, I feel like I must be in a Doctor Who episode, right?
It does feel like that sometimes.
Yeah, it's so weird. But like, in general, so I was interested in, so for people who don't know, for people who know as little about TikTok as I did 2 months ago, let me explain. So one of the elements of TikTok is you can't just browse. Like, you can't just go in and look. Like on YouTube, you can follow like threads and like from one channel to another, and you can just like search for something and find a topic and then and look around. Like, TikTok gives you almost no agency at all. Basically, you can follow people, and so you can go to people's accounts and you can like look. So it's possible to navigate to a particular person and watch like the videos that they have made. Like, that's a thing you can choose to do. They have a separately curated but sort of arbitrarily curated people you're following thing where it will give you randomized videos from people that you're following, so that you can kind of curate that and control whose videos are there, but you can't just browse. You can't. It gives you a random video from one of the people that you're following, and then you scroll past it, and it gives you another random video from people that you're following. And then, of course, there's the main place for the algorithm is your For You page, where the algorithm knows what you want to see and
That's
has
so specific.
Yeah,
It's too accurate. It's too accurate.
That's how I figured out I had ADHD. I was like, oh, all of these content creators who are like specifically saying that they do these things and that they were diagnosed a year ago. I'm like, I do that.
Yes. So it takes it looks at like the videos that you like and that how long you watch any particular video, and then it feeds you other videos that it believes that you will like based on your preferences, and those get more refined over time. But you can't browse. Like there's no browsing. There's just the algorithm gives you what the algorithm gives you, and it's fairly random. So to me, that's by far the most surreal experience of seeing TikTok and trying to understand it. I'm only vaguely beginning to understand how strange that must be and the kind of dynamics that must create for you guys as content creators, because there's a sense in which the sense it gives me is that the community themselves are kind of I don't know. Does it create some sort of a sense of disconnect among the community because there's that lack of browsing, that lack of like I'm coming to your channel, like I've been sent to your channel, or and if it's in your followed list, then they'll keep coming back. Like it's not like there's no mechanism for any choice whatsoever. But it feels to me like you're much more being forced into a kind of I don't know, like blind speed dating situation. Is right?
No.
I mean, like all
it
these.
really is like trying to figure out what the algorithm will like from you. So it's not necessarily like if you would like to grow your page and would you like more people who are liking to see this stuff, you can't necessarily just do whatever you want. You kind of have to pay attention to what about your content the algorithm likes. And there are instances where you do a video that you like and are proud of, and not even your followers will see it. So it is very tricky.
Yeah. It's that does seem really challenging. So Alyssa was asking, are you worried about like the echo chamber phenomenon on this platform? Can creators respond to one another's videos and agree or disagree, just like that a bunch of people kind of saying the same thing in ignorance of each other saying them? It seems like that could happen much more easily, right, on this kind of a platform. What's your experience with that, like how you're connecting with people or are able to be in dialogue?
You do kind of get a little bit of an echo chamber, not nearly as much as something like Twitter, especially with politics. As I was on, as a former journalist, I was on, very investigative reportery type TikTok before I did the whole, Lord of the Rings thing, and you do kind of get just like a whole bunch of feedback of just like, yes, you're absolutely right, and these people hyping you up about how you're so right. And because you are interacting with that content, you're not going to see the opposite side of things. But
because the algorithm is going to keep showing you things that are just like that you like. Right.
Exactly. So I'm conceited enough that I will go to the other side, and the people who are, not necessarily huge fans of this TV show, or think that the books are bad, what have you. And I just kind of try to ignore it. I'm almost 30. I don't really want to spend my time focusing on things I don't like.
Yeah.
And I think you said that in one of yours as well. Like, I don't want to engage in that. I just want to focus on the stuff that I love.
Yeah. I think Don is right that it does to a certain extent create an echo chamber, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, I think, because like you said, if I want to see the opposite, I can. And I think there's been a lot of times when your followers would tag you in a video. So recently, tagged in videos of people who like, sort of being toxic about Rings of Power, and I get tagged in that video, so then I see that video. But normally that wouldn't show up on my For You page.
Right.
And it does. I guess the comment section does get a little worrying sometimes when absolutely everyone agrees with you about an opinion, and you're like, well, okay, I wish someone would disagree, because I don't want to create like a monolith of everyone being like, yeah, you're absolutely right. You want a bit of discussion, but
Yeah.
you also want that positivity.
Yeah. Hadidro in the YouTube comments just made, I think, a really cool, really encapsulated my experience. He says in TikTok, you don't go to the content comes to you. And that's a really great way to characterize it. That's exactly what happens. And so he says it's consumer-centered rather than creator-centered in that sense.
No kidding.
Yeah, so it's really great when you're trying to like consume something, but when you're trying to create something and get it to a specific audience, it's almost impossible.
That's the thing that blows my mind as a creator, trying to imagine like one of the, I mean, as a podcaster, right? Like the very like cornerstone of what it means to be is like you make something and then you push it out to people, right?
Yeah.
Like that's like literally step one of like how the world works as far as I see. And you can't do that in TikTok. Like you don't push it out to people. You put it there and then hope that people get it, right?
Yeah. You hope that, your followers see it and your followers comment, and that the algorithm sees that your followers are commenting on it and pushes it to not your followers.
Yeah.
Right.
Corey, just to kind of put it in perspective, I had a mutual yesterday post a video. She has about I think it's over 1 million followers now at this point. But the brand reached out to her because they thought there had been some kind of mistake because the video got so few views, because that initial interaction was like none. There was nothing there, just because the first 200 to 300 people didn't seem to like it. And so the algorithm, which is all automated, just like totally shuts it down, which is terrifying.
Right. Right. So if somehow the thing that you make for some reason rubs the algorithm the wrong way, no one will ever, it goes into the black hole of TikTok and no one will ever see it.
Yep.
It doesn't ever push it to the For You page.
So
it's
weird.
the attention as well. Like if the first 5 seconds of your video, it does not captivate them, then it's not going to do well.
And
like
it's also,
they will scroll fast. That's
it's
it.
designed that way because we like innately want, like that the high you feel when you get like a viral video, or when like a lot of people follow you at once, or they're all commenting and liking your stuff. Like TikTok doesn't want you to have it one way or the other. They don't want you to have a bunch of videos that do poorly and none of them do well, because then you will not be motivated to make more content. But conversely, if all of your videos do well, you won't have the same sort of like drive and feeling of like of super viral video. So it's designed like that on purpose to every once in a while give you a video that does really, really, really well, and then it won't give you another one of those.
It is an addiction. It is 100% an
100%.
addiction.
Yeah, it's designed to like
You're
force
always
you
chasing it.
to keep going, to keep creating, to keep scrolling, to whatever else. Like it is kind of genius. Really.
The upsetting thing.
Yeah, but it
it's
feels
the
really
stupidest.
positive. Right.
Yeah.
You
always
I
keep
think
going
Willie's
for it.
waiting to be let in, Corey. So I don't know if you see him in the waiting room, but
sorry.
Nubita
I'll bring Nubita
going to join
in.
us too.
Awesome. Thanks for pointing that out. I did totally miss that. It's both. I don't know. I mean, it's both fascinating and also kind of creepy at the same time. Hey, Nubita, welcome.
You're muted.
You're muted there, Nubita. Yeah, and we're talking about the algorithm and trying to explain some of the weirdnesses about how TikTok works. So.
Okay, I should be unmuted now. Am I unmuted?
There we go. Yeah, you are.
You're good.
Nice
Hey,
background
what's up,
there,
guys?
bud.
How you doing? Emily's here.
Thanks.
Don's here. What is this? And what's happening? I just saw it.
I feel like we need to get a pint. Like we're
Exactly.
It's like the good old days.
It is.
What is
It
this?
is.
What is this?
Come back to London, guys. Come back to London. Let's go.
I feel like we're on the bus
Past our hotel
again.
yesterday,
you
I
know,
was like,
yeah.
no. Oh, good to see you.
Yeah, that's
Good to see
awesome.
you guys.
That's awesome.
Have any
Ye-
of you met in real life, or was London the first time you guys had met in real life?
London was the first for me.
First time we all met.
Yeah,
Yeah.
first time.
That's exciting. That's cool.
It was great.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, so how do you guys as you're thinking about kind of cultivating the community? I mean, we've been talking about the community, right? People who are engaging and you're wanting to continue engaging, but you've got this algorithm that you're trying to manage, right? How do you do it? How do you try to focus to kind of retain and build a community and a following in this kind of context when you're at the end of the day kind of powerless to make sure people see your content?
I just keep making the same thing over and over again and hoping it works. And honest to God, that's like different question, different video, same 3-second hi, welcome to obscure Lord of the Rings facts intro, and it works, I guess, a bit. My channel growth compared to the first year, the second year of my channel growth has been absolutely abysmal, comparatively speaking. But like, I also recognize that I'm coming from a place of privilege to be like, hey, yeah, this one only got 40,000 views. It's not so good. But like, okay, somebody else would feel very differently about that. So yeah, I just kind of keep doing the same thing.
I also feel like engaging with your audience is a big thing. Like, I don't have as big of an audience as the rest of these guys do, but I would take, my audience that actually cares about what I have to say and supports me no matter what, whenever my content's all over the place, rather than, trading that off for like a larger audience of not as engaged people. Like, I feel like in order to really grow and create like a community of people, you have to comment back, you have to interact, you have to like build sort of like loyalty, honestly, of like people wanting to know about you and getting to know you as a person.
Yeah. I feel like I get in where I fit in. Like, I just stay doing what I do. I've noticed my growth has been stagnant, but it doesn't bother me because it's weird. I see that I'm at like 76,000, and I've been there, and comparatively to like Don or Annex, not as high, but it feels like everybody recognizes me, and I get opportunities from what I've been doing, and that in itself, it's fine. So I don't need the growth in that sense. I feel like I get the recognition and from people that of importance in the community, and that means more than anything to me. And to make good videos for people and informative videos for people. So if I need to make a 3-minute video, I know it'll get me more followers if I make a 1-minute video. I know that, but I don't want to sacrifice my content to just get followers. I'd rather make the followers that I have satisfied with what I got,
Right.
because I'm telling them the way I do my content and to be as informative as possible with the lore, I feel more true. So it doesn't bother me at all. At first it was like, I would like to grow. I want to reach as many people as possible. But then I was like, you know what? That's not how the algorithm works. It works this way, but I'm happy being in this pocket that I'm in, and I'm just kind of cool with it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, and I think
it's more about your person, yourself, I think.
Right.
What you want to do.
Being true to yourself. You'll gain the people that matter by doing that.
And I think Emily's right about like interacting with it, because I've definitely noticed that there is out of all like the thousands of people who watch it, there's a core group that always comment or like always interact with the video.
Yes.
And so you respond to them every time, and you sort of build that connection that way.
Yeah.
So there will be thousands that you won't know, and it'll be just nameless sort of, just pictures that just watch your video, like it, and then move on. But there'll be a few that comment every time. And so, yeah.
Love
then you
those
sort of,
people.
You know,
Love
Yes.
those people.
And like,
You
I will
become mutual,
recognize them on
yeah.
all of our videos, and then commenting to them on Dawn or Annex's videos,
Yeah.
or being in one of Willie's lives and interacting with them on lives. Like, that is the good community building kind of stuff that
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah,
exactly.
definitely interact with each other. If you're in the same community, like me and Annex and Emily and Don, very much in the same community. So when Don's on YouTube or Twitch and I see him on, I'll interact. And then, he's, oh, knew better. And then everybody, oh, Numenor is in here too. And it just, so we just strengthen each other's community. Emily will hop on my live, I'll hop on her live, just say hi or interact with a question. And then, the interaction, the other person acknowledging, and then, just being excited. I'm excited when I go on one of their lives. I'm genuinely excited. Like when Annex is on and, he hops on one of my lives. Annex is in the building. It builds excitement when you're excited. For the people like, oh, Annex, if they don't know, they're like, who's Annex? Newbet is excited, so let me get excited. Who is this? Let me go follow them. Or they know, and then they're like, wow, this Let's Live is awesome. Look at all these people that we have from our community that we follow, that we trust their, opinions about, or their viewpoints on Lord of the Rings. Look, they're all on this one live. This is like Christmas. And people say that all the time. When me, Callie, and Annex are in a live, they're like, oh my God, my favorite Tolkien creators are here, or this is like super team or whatever. Like, it feels cool. You know what I'm saying? So
that's always a really nice touch, just to sort of have the people in the chat do that. So anyway, to answer your question, Corey, yeah, it's really nice, but sometimes we are slaves to the algorithm.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting the way that you guys are kind of connecting with each other and focusing on that. I mean, it does seem to some extent to me like the way that TikTok is set up is not really designed to foster the kind of community that you guys are. It's almost, you guys are kind of swimming upstream, really, in fostering the kind of community and interaction that you are. I love the like rebellious element of that. The way in which it seems to me like that was one of the things that drew me to it too. I'm like, hey, we're jobbing the system here, right? We're like, this is awesome. I'm in. Let's do it. And I think that's really cool, especially for the in that sort of way. Well, let's talk about one of the relatively recent Rings of Power thing. I've been out for a little while. One of the recent Rings of Power things that we haven't talked about yet, Maggie and I haven't talked about yet. Would love to hear your perspectives on, with an assistance from a visual aid there from Numenor, is the orcs. What do you guys think about the orcs? The orc pictures that we've gotten, they're very remarkable, I think. Particular reflections you guys have had?
I'm just excited about the practical effects. I feel like everybody else, and seeing the Weta's
the prosthetics and
comforting to know Weta, familiarity, I suppose.
I feel
terrifying.
Really
that one over your shoulder, Numenor, is terrifying.
That's why I put him in the background.
I don't. You don't want that guy coming at you.
I felt like it was like a kind of like a laugh in the face to all the people that's been talking nonsense, because they can't really say anything, and they're like, oh, well, those are good, but it's like you sound dumb when you say stuff like that. You're like, oh, well, those are good, but everything else is like, stop it. You make yourself sound dumb. So it's like it's been silencing people. The more stuff that's been coming out, it's just been quiet. I haven't been getting as much, kickback as originally, when people just going crazy for no reason. And I definitely don't want to make this about that, but it's definitely refreshing, that we're getting updates and we're seeing a silencing of the haters for the most part. Now, of course, the new trailer came out. We got a Black Muriel, so we the up is going to go up again, but right. It is what it is. But
I can see the YouTube clickbait titles now.
Yeah,
100%,
yeah, exactly.
100%,
yeah. Sorry, I'm
excellently.
I'm looking at some of the orc images here, so I just put the one up on the screen with the close up with the dude with the helmet. Which is so cool. And you look at so this looks like he's got 4 pieces. He's got what looks like a skull, right? The headpiece is like a bone skull. It looks.
Someone suggested that it might be a warg skull, like they're wargs that have died, and they wear that was creepy to me. I was like,
maybe.
Ooh. Yeah.
It looks like similarly. It looks like the garment that he's wearing around the bottom looks like the badly tanned hide of I dare not guess what creature. Basically, it looks scaly. So I don't know where this guy is and what animals he had access to, but yeah, you see scales on it, maybe like an alligator skin or something.
Desert
I don't even
lizard kind of deal thing.
Some kind of thing. We've got the chin pieces coming down, which are like rusted metal. It looks like he's got two pieces that he took from somebody else's armor, like the armor of a dead opponent or something, and stapled to his skull hat, right? And then there's what looks like an arrowhead right down in the middle, like this sort of rusted, bloody.
That's actually like a symbol of someone.
You think so? Like
Yeah,
like a natural sigil there on his face.
It's like it looks like a Dark Lord-esque type figure.
Right.
Not an arrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you look at
Maybe.
it closely, like it looks like a figure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotta Google
Yeah.
this.
Possibly so.
It does. It also looks like what holds the Eye of Sauron in the tower.
Yes. If you look at it, it looks like a
that one, yeah.
a head with the shoulders and
Yeah.
Oh, that's wild. I totally missed that.
Yeah. I'm looking at. Let's see.
That's true.
I'll get that one here. Okay. Oh, hang on.
Meantime, I'm just wondering why one of the orcs had blue eyes. I'm like, oh, are we getting some corrupted elves kind of stuff? Because
Yeah, the blue-eyed orc was the one I was just looking at. Yeah. He's got very
Look at the
creepily
detail of
blue
his
eyes.
teeth.
Mm-hmm.
I have not zoomed in this far. I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are legitimately terrifying, which
yeah.
is interesting because, like, I haven't been scared of orcs in Lord of the Rings for a few years now. Like, maybe when I first watched it. But these, they scare me. These orcs scare me now.
I legitimately, when I made the review video, I put a warning because I'm very aware there are a bunch of people that watch their my videos with their kids that are like in the 7 to 12 range. So I'm like, okay, let's be cognizant. I'm like, hey, this image is really scary if you're watching this with your kids. Don't scroll away. Just hide their eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure. So the one with the metal helmet, the image you were just holding up there, Maggie, has what looks like a growth or something on the right side of like his right cheekbone, which you can just see inside. Some kind of that growth on his cheek there. I'm showing the high res image to the people on the stream, but I'm not. If I share my screen with you guys, Zoom will screw it all up. So I'm sorry. I'm making you guys guess what image I'm showing everybody else. But
behind the curtain, this is what I have to do when Corey's presenting.
Exactly.
What are you looking at?
You're the wizard now.
Yeah. But anyway, like it look on the one hand, it looks like there's definitely a scar there. You can see a scar coming down to his lip there, and it's possible that that's just like sort of healed scar tissue up there. But I'm wondering, like, one of the things that I keep asking myself when I'm looking at these orc pictures is essentially like what are we seeing? What can we guess about orc nature, orc culture, as they're representing it in this show from this? Like, what, Annex, I'm trying to pry story out, right? Like that's what I'm trying to get. Some of these, like, so here I'm looking at the one with the spiky helmet and all the torches, and you can see the other orcs in the background, and that one.
There we go. Thank you, Maggie.
Yeah.
I've also just messaged them to all of you, so if you need it, it's there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I do. It does look like we're seeing. I agree with Praise in the comments. It looks like lots of scavenged armor, scavenged armor and bones and things. So it's very sort of eclectic. The chainmail that we can see around the shoulders of the guy holding the torch certainly looks like it's repurposed. It's all, it's got holes all in it and everything. Looking at their faces, like their noses. If you do a nose study of these orcs, they're very different. They're very different. Like their nostrils, the whole shape of their nose is quite different. All over the place. I'm getting close up now. The one that's
Gonna be honest, I don't think I noticed the nose, but
They're very snake-like. Like I think they're all very similar in that they have these like recessed nostrils that kind of go up.
Yeah.
Actual like construction looks like there's different bone formations under there or something. Like they do look like different races of orcs.
Yes.
Like there are different. They're from different areas.
That's what I was going to say too. They
different
look like
backgrounds.
from different areas.
Because correct me if
You
I'm
kind of
wrong.
see definitely desert orcs there.
Yeah, no, go ahead, New.
There are definitely some desert orcs, and I feel like this is possibly the one I have in the background. Possibly might be one where they're using the cloak to protect themselves from the sun. You know what I'm saying? Because there wouldn't be any natural protection from the sun in the desert. So if they're somewhere in Harad or in South, and there's orcs there, they'd have to find another way to protect themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. 'Cause this definitely feels like, I'm getting the vibe, at least from the pictures and from the big air quotes story that we know so far. It kind of feels like there's gonna be a bunch of different orc tribes, because they're not united yet by Sauron, and they're in as New said, Harad, and they're in Rune and these sort of desert areas. And then Sauron starts making his push, maybe with the blue wizards. I don't know. I got my fingers crossed. But that kind of feels like where this is headed.
Yeah.
I agree. And what I keep just kind of coming back to is trying to figure out their suggestion of the origins. Now, it's possible that they've just what they're showing is the result of breeding orcs for a long, long time, right? I mean, goodness, like domestic dogs, right? Very pronounced differences in their facial physiology, right? So orcs that are being bred not only in different areas, as you guys were suggesting, but also for different purposes, right? That there will have been very deliberate breeding programs, right? So maybe, for instance, one of the differences that I'm noticing in the noses, right? So you've got dude with metal helmet with that sigil you were talking about, Nubeta, who has almost the Voldemort non-nose, right? From the film. He's got almost no sticky out nose and just the recessed nostrils there above his unpleasant looking teeth. Whereas the guy with the bone helmet has a nose tip that sticks out, but though there almost no bridge, right? And then you have the really large triangular nostrils, though. And then for the one that what does, I agree, Nubeta, look like a desert orc, the one behind you, has huge nostrils, has a much more prominent nose with a prominent bridge, and so I'm like, is this are we know, for instance, from the books, the two different specifically bred species of orcs that we see are the tracker orcs and the warrior orcs, right? Those two orcs that almost find Sam and Frodo in Mordor, right? And it's clear who's in charge because the warrior orc is calling the tracker orc Snaga, which is one of the few words of orc speech that we know, because it means slave. So it's one of the few words we know. So we know what the pecking order is. The one being called Snaga is not in charge, though he's the one who kills the other guy, of course, in that scene. But anyway, there's the reference to his to his snotty nose, right? Your snotty noses. What's more useful, right? And their snotty noses of the trackers are not much use. So the extreme differences. So I think we're clearly getting some breeding, and again, not just they've become different things, right? But they have been planned and bred for different purposes. Which is kind of creepier. Do you think?
I think the hideous race, the orcs.
Exactly. I think we're definitely going with, by we I mean the Rings of Power show. We're definitely doing the corrupt elves version of the orcs. You think?
That way to me.
Yeah.
And honestly, sometimes we gotta stop letting the retcons ruin the story. Some retcons hurt when you try to. He retconned it. Some retcons hurt.
Yeah,
it makes more sense for them to be corrupted elves. Period. Yeah. That's it. Any other thing, you can tell he had trouble. He was struggling, figuring out how to make it so he really wanted it to work. When sometimes the answer is right in front of you, just leave it how it was. That works
Right.
out the best. You'd be better off not retconning it and just saying, and this is Tolkien, we love him, but he wasn't perfect. He would have been better off just saying, they're corrupted elves. I know I didn't want them to have spirits because they go to the Hall of Mandos. Easy enough to say, once their spirit was corrupted by Melkor, they couldn't go because of that reason. That's easy enough to just say that. It is easy enough to just say that instead of trying to change everything else, because it kind of messes up the story when you do that. That happened a couple times, and I know our love for him makes it like, oh, he can't, make any mistakes, but he made several mistakes like that.
Yeah.
And
Well-
it hurts the story more than it helps it.
Well, it hurt the Silmarillion in that it prevented him from writing it. It prevented him from finishing it. If not for all the retcon he was doing, and as you say, the kind of retcon, it's not just particular isolated choices, right? It was the whole retcon path that he set himself on, right? Where he's like, okay, at the age of 65, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to rework the entire system, and then I'm going to rewrite the whole story in another mode following that system that I'm creating. And it was like, dude, that's not going to pan out, right? That was not a good idea.
It changes everything. Like it's like a ripple, like it's like a stone in the pond.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
It changes everything. An avalanche of things changes. Like it always comes back to every single time we have the same conversation. But the one little Fingon you think is not important, Gilgalad, we don't know so much. That one thing changes so much. It changes so much, and it's like. Okay, I can see it either way. We had that conversation, but it changes so many things.
It does.
It's important to know what retcon we're following, what lore are we following.
I'm trying to picture Tolkien as a modern author. Like in 2022, if you try and publish The Lord of the Rings and the Silmarillion and then all of the other stuff without any of the backstory, it's like, wait, you changed what now?
Yes. Yeah.
I've always felt that like Lord of the Rings could never be published now. Like with the way fantasy's being published, like you couldn't start a book with like several pages of this is what the hobbits are and this is their tradition. Like you couldn't. You have to start with a story.
Nobody would
our
attention spans are not that long.
Like there's no story starting yet.
We don't have the patience for you figuring out the whole world. We need to know what the story is. Like he muddled so much with just trying to.
It couldn't be published now.
He did some
And when you
bold
think about
things, some
publisher
crazy
expectation, no publisher would read that spec script, you know?
Right.
He actually told his publisher told him, hey, you can't have a book called The Return of the King. You're giving away the ending. But because he did it, The Return of the Jedi was able to keep its title because of the Lord of the Rings. It's a fact. Because he got away with that, The Return of the Jedi is same thing. Hey, you're telling what happens. Like now, it kind of ruins the story, but it actually doesn't even ruin anything. It's so crazy.
Yeah. No, it is. There's no question that Tolkien in the modern era, like submitting it to a modern editor, would be. I can't even imagine it.
No, doesn't work.
No, but anyway, so I do agree about the retcon. So to me, with the orc choice, I think as an adaptation, I mean, there's a whole bunch of stuff that he threw out as to what could explain the orcs, but it seems to me like there's really only two options that you can really kind of, if you do any of the other stuff, no one's gonna, it's not gonna even sound like anything Tolkien wrote, because he never wrote it, right? He just threw out these ideas and he never really thought through the story. So there's really only two possible versions. One is the Corrupted Elves version, and the other is the one that's actually earlier than that, the orcs as constructs, right? Like the Frankenstein kind of, just like flesh golems, right? That then get animated by the will of Morgoth and Sauron. That was the original version of the orcs. And there were moments when I first saw the orc pictures, there were some of them that I was looking at and I'm like, they wouldn't do that, would they? They would do because they would know that everyone is going to expect the Silmarillion answer, the Corrupted Elves version. And I'm back to the one with the bone skull and the pointy ears and the blue eyes again. And this is the one that most clearly screams Corrupted Elf, right? Even the shape of his ears is almost exactly the same as the shape of the elf ears we get. It's not exactly, but it's very reminiscent. And then the blue eyes, especially. So, I think I think we are definitely gonna be getting that. I will be fascinated to see if they. I've been laughing. Annex and Dunn, I've seen videos from both of you recently addressing the "Where do orcs come from?" question, presumably in response to these drops, right? Yeah. I've had to laugh because I'm like, oh man, I spent 10 years trying to undo the confusion Peter Jackson wrought by that Uruk-hai scene when he combined like the mud pit thing with Saruman telling the narrative and how that gets combined in people's mind. Like I remember like the week the Return of the King came out in the theaters, like spending so much time trying to like, oh no, okay, hang on, it was a little confusing, let me explain, right? Oh man, like I did that so much from then on, like ever since the release date of that movie, I've been having that conversation with people. So I've just been
about it.
Yeah, I've just been chuckling watching you guys addressing this issue still on TikTok.
For 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm hoping that they deal with a little bit more clarity with the orc question here. I mean, it's going to come up, right? I mean, and we don't need a whole bunch of exposition in the narrative, in the show necessarily, but it's got to come up, and I'll be really interested to see how they handle it. The article where we were getting that information about, orc women and orc cultures, but just another thing that I can't even understand. Like, can't even understand the reaction videos from people who are like, see, like it says they talked about orc women and that proves they don't know what they're talking about. And I'm like, what are you even talking? Like, why would you say that? Why would anybody say that? Like,
it also, Corey, it kind of begs the question of like, is it possible for a modern audience to like have the books and the movie and this TV show exist separate from each other, utilizing Middle Earth as sort of like the umbrella? But like I'm obviously going to unconsciously draw parallels, but like if they don't have the same like Ring of Barra here, or like if Robert Arameo's accent for Elrond isn't exactly like Hugo Weaving, like we have to be able to separate that.
You have to. Sure. You have to. And also from the books, as you were suggesting as well. Like Absolutely. You have to understand it on its own grounds. That's the first premise of being able to critique it, even to compare it, even if what you want to do is compare and contrast with Peter Jackson or compare and contrast with the books, right? Before you can do that, step one has to be understanding it on its own terms. Right, understanding its story and what it's doing, then you compare and contrast, right? Anyway, their references to orc culture, I think, are really interesting. I think that seems to me an almost inevitable choice for them to make, because we're talking about looking at we have to be seeing orcs who are not, or at least not yet, directly under Sauron's control, right? Because Sauron has not yet established control over, his new forces, right? So that's, I think, certainly one of the things we're going to begin seeing over the course of season 1 and into season 2, right, is sort of the rise of Sauron's empire in Middle Earth. But it's not happened yet. So there's going to be all of these survivals of orcs out there from the First Age who have been roughing it, right? Who have been living on their own, establishing their own little orc cultures, whatever those are like. That has to have happened in order for the orcs to have survived, right? So,
or following the next best thing. They always seem to fall under the sway of a baddie, right? So we have someone in the South, let's say, that's being just bad on their own terms, a black Numenorian possibly, right. or one of the men that just literally just want to be bad, because that is what it is. The orcs could literally follow them if they exert enough influence or power. You know what I'm saying? Like, who is Adar? Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I'm hoping we get a black Numenorian there to establish the whole. As a way to establish the dynamic of the decline of the Numenorian culture, right? Yeah. To establish here are some Numenorians that have drifted and gone quite bad, and to use them to show the imperialist Numenorian connection in Middle Earth, right? Showing some Numenorians enslaving, races from Middle Earth and stuff.
That's why I'm so.
You
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm breaking up a little bit there, Maggie. Sorry.
Maggie Freeze.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to see what Emily wanted to say.
Oh, I was just gonna say about the whole orc tribal culture. Like when I first read that article, I kind of drew a parallel to what the Mandalorian and the book of Boba Fett did with the Tusken Raiders. Because in the original movies, the Tusken Raiders are sand people, and they are just bad for the sake of being bad. I think Obi-Wan at one point even kind of insinuates that they're savages.
Right.
And the thing that I really enjoyed about the Mandalorian was the Mandalorian and Boba Fett, they go and they experience the Tusken culture, and they give them not necessarily humanity, but they give them these are disenfranchised people where this is their land. There used to be an ocean here that they thrived off of, and now they don't have that, and they're being attacked from sides. And so I think it'll be really interesting to see if they end up kind of following that path with the orcs, with being these are corrupted elves, they live in tribes, they've created these cultures on their own, and kind of giving them a little bit of history and some sort of other reason for being why they are, rather than just the fact that they're corrupted by Sauron and bad and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was just a thought that I had when I read that, and I was like, I wonder if they're going that direction, because I enjoyed that Star Wars did that.
Yeah.
I think that could be fascinating if they do that, because then if it starts out with orcs have their own tribal culture and they have their own societies that they've built in the absence of Morgoth before Sauron comes into power, then it almost creates a sense of tragedy of what Sauron does. He comes in and he sort of takes over and ruins their bare minimum way of life, and sort of stops any chance of them having to build any society. And it sort of paints the orcs with a sense of tragedy of what happens to them later. I think that could be fascinating.
Yeah, it could be. Guys, I'm gonna get out of here.
Tricky. So all right, yeah.
All right.
See you, Newt.
So,
all right.
In a bit.
Thanks for stopping in.
No problem.
Yeah, it is interesting. This, to me, this is the biggest question. Again, this is where the origin question comes in to be so important, right? At the end of the day, I believe that the reason Tolkien never solved this question, but the reason he was invested in trying to solve it, the reason he wasn't satisfied with the corrupted elves thing, ultimately is the question of free will, right? Because if orcs have free will, you can't, how could possibly even Morgoth have the power to corrupt captive elves so thoroughly that their children in all perpetuity are born corrupt, completely corrupt, right? And without the freedom to possibly ever make good choices, right, and amend. And ultimately, that was, I think, one of the... And because you'll notice, even in the Lord of the Rings book, there's no moral consequences to killing orcs. It's not a big deal. Killing orcs is a thing you brag about. Exterminating, there's no it's the question of should we or should we not exterminate all of these orcs is not even a moral question in the Lord of the Rings. And that's a heritage from the early days of Tolkien's writings, when they were constructs, when they were not creatures. They didn't have souls, they didn't have choice. They were like little murder bots created by Morgoth, who's their whole their whole existence is just mindless drones programmed for hatred and cruelty and malice against anything that's good, right? That was, and so if you've got all of these little malicious murder bots, then decommissioning as many of those as you possibly can is a good day. Right. Yeah. And that's exactly how they talk about killing orcs in The Lord of the Rings, whether you're talking about Legolas and Gimli's, competition, right? Or all of the many references where the Battle of the Black Gate and Helm's Deep and everywhere else, where if they're humans, we give them quarter, we take their surrender and everything, but orcs, we just exterminate them all. So that's the big question, and this is so I think it was important for Tolkien, like he talk about, you know, as Nubeta was saying, the repercussions, right? In some ways, the corrupted elves version of that story is not yet, like, its repercussions are not yet woven all the way back through the books. So yeah, so it's a really substantive question then. Like, if they could, it would be really interesting for the orcs to be in some sense tragic, right? To see them also, like, though in different ways and perhaps in more profound ways, under the dominion and enslavement of Sauron, and therefore objects of pity for us, right? We see them beginning to develop these, like, proto cultures of their own, and then Sauron comes in and, you know,
it would also
overrides it all.
It would also line up with what we kind of, the showrunners, they're trying to get us to care and engage, and they're showing us these different cultures. It's really rich, and we don't as a second age. So this is an excellent way to create that tension and to build those story arcs that I had really never considered. So and comparing it to the Boba Fett storyline, genius. Mandalorian, that was
Love that.
yeah, and I agree. At the end of the day, I don't think I'd be comfortable. Certainly not. I would think about the way, especially in the Book of Boba Fett, which this is my favorite part of the Book of Boba Fett, was the Sand People plotline. If they were to go as far as the Book of Boba Fett did in you know, sort of humanizing the Sand People, that would become really uncomfortable with the orcs if we went as far as that, right?
It'd be a problem.
And I don't get a sense from these images that they're going there, right? I mean, these all look very
evil.
Evil would be
menacing. So.
Evil, menacing, even just sickening, right? In the
just
way,
the teeth alone. The teeth alone do it.
And the skin literally, like, falling on a corpse. Like, there's death moldering happening.
And I think you're right, because I mean, we know that this has to lead eventually to the War of the Last Alliance, and so if you spend 4
spoilers,
seasons humanizing,
Annex, come on.
To this audience.
Yeah, seriously.
But if you spend 4 seasons humanizing orcs, then you know, at the that final battle, they have to be like cannon fodder that you just have to mow through. So you can't humanize them too much, because then like, you don't want to be on the side of the good when they're just killing all of these orcs.
It would fundamentally change the dynamics of the battles and everything. I mean, it would be a very fundamental change from the book. Right now, again, this is a change Tolkien himself was contemplating, right, and was trying to navigate around. It's my theory, looking at his orc. So I look at all of his orc theories, and I ask myself, like, what's the pattern? Like, you know, what does he seem to be groping for, right? He's not finding it yet. He doesn't resolve it, but what are the issues, right? And I think what he was trying to do was trying to combine the two things, right? I want to first stay true to the fundamental theological premise that he decided on, that evil cannot create, as
so many people have ruined that quote in YouTube comments.
Yeah, exactly. But no, I mean, it was true that nothing is evil in the beginning, right? And this theological premise, which is ultimately an Augustinian Catholic premise, that evil cannot create, it can only corrupt. This was the primary thing that was fueling this. But at the same time, so he was looking into, they have to be corrupted something. How was that process like? What are they corrupted from? But I think what he was searching for was a way to prevent that corruption from leading to free will, from leading to this complexity. Like, we want to still be able to feel there's a freedom on the battlefield of Middle Earth. You know, anytime you have humans fighting humans, there's always
level of compassion for the other side, no matter how evil they are.
Yes. There's no. Whereas there's an almost allegorical purity, right, to fighting orcs, right? They simply are and represent evil, and you don't have to, like, they're the enemy. You don't have to feel bad about it, right?
No one should feel sad at the Battle of Pelennor Fields when Theoden yells death with it like that. That doesn't. I don't want to feel that personally.
No, not the orcs.
Not the orcs. Yeah, exactly. Right. No, I was invested in that one.
You want to be
no.
like, yeah.
Exactly.
Not the guy with a skull spiked on his helmet. I liked that. What was Chad? What was his name?
Yeah.
He could have been a good guy.
Yeah, the stacked heads guy was yeah.
That was weird. I'm sure there's a fan fiction though that exists somewhere, right? Where I mean, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War video games kind of did this a little bit, where you play with.
And there's there's that Russian one, the Russian novel. I'm forgetting the title.
The Last Ring Bearer.
Yeah.
I read that on live stream once. It's a mess. Eomer's a drunk and Aragorn's what's the Game of Thrones family? The Lannisters. Lannisters. Yeah, Aragorn is basically a Lannister. It's a mess.
I should read this. I need to read this.
Yeah, it's a fan fiction which is just trying to tell the other side of the story, basically, or to reconstruct a different side of the story. Anyway, so this is what I'm most interested to see with the orcs, and what I was immediately thinking of when looking at all these orc images was trying to see how are they positioning the orcs, right? Where on this spectrum from pure construct, no problem, kill them all on the one side, to anti-heroes that have our sympathy, right, and compassion, to use Emily, using your example, full like Book of Boba Fett sand people on the other side, right? But where in that spectrum are they going to drop the orcs? Yeah, they're on the spectrum, and I don't think they're going to be on either end of that spectrum. But where are they going to fall is, to me, and I think if I had to guess from looking at these pictures, I'm guessing they're falling about 3/4 of the way towards construct. Like they're not. There will be some things, right, that like we could see at least maybe some kind of potential. Like maybe the orcs could become something that we could have pity for, or we could have compassion for. But I don't think they're going to themselves be objects of compassion. So they'll be further than the book orcs are. Towards the Sand People, but I think they're going to be less than halfway towards the Sand People would be my guess. But
do you feel like go ahead next.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, if I was going to put my cynical hat on, I feel like this whole sort of idea of like orcs with their tribal cultures and there'll be female orcs and all that stuff. I feel like there's also a bit of marketing to that, of building up this like. It's just, you want to get the buzz on Twitter and like Facebook and like YouTube and stuff.
The speculation.
You want to get that going. So I don't think the idea of orcs with tribal cultures is going to be that strong on the show. It could be like the first season has a bit of that, and then it sort of quickly moves on from it. So it does have also a faint whiff of like, this is clickbait. The show will have orc tribal cultures, and it's like, not really.
Right.
Well, the marketing
is
actually,
and that's it.
The marketing, what I was going to comment on, where one thing I loved about these is just these images gave us. It shows us the attention that they're giving to detail. Like these are not just the bog standard. Here's the 19 costumes, replicate them 1,000 times. Here's the orcs. It's like no, a lot of thought went into detail of these things. So there's that element. But the fact that they released this many at once before we know the rest of the major players, I think that's a really interesting marketing ploy. Like 6 images of a baddie, and we're going to make you ooh and ah over them before we actually tell you the rest of the main players within the actual story. Right. So it did feel a bit like a dramatic drop. Like, please go talk about these ugly, evil things. We're not actually going to tell you more about the world. We're just going to give you this thing to sink your teeth in.
The anti-stormtrooper effect, if you will. Each of the individual bad guys is, cool looking and not wearing the same, black and white armor.
Yeah, exactly.
I apologize. I do have to head out.
No,
in
it's
a minute.
we're
always
coming to the
finish
end of our
at an
time.
hour.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna finish up here, if only out of mercy to Maggie, for whom it's quite late now,
And Annex.
and
you
Annex
too.
as well.
And
Yeah,
it's approaching
exactly.
11. Yes.
Yeah, we're approaching
Oh
11
yeah, we
p.m.
get 11
over there
p.m.
in
and
the
I'm like
UK.
11
pouring
p.m.
out.
Yes.
Oh,
Exactly.
Thank you guys so much for coming. This was. I feel like we just scratched the surface, though. I could do this for hours, but see you all again.
You guys busy tomorrow? I mean,
I know, right?
Slightly.
No, thank you for having us. This is a pleasure.
Yeah, this will be fun. I hope I can join you guys on some TikTok live soon. It'd be
Yeah.
fun to join in on that. I was, Emily, I was just having that rush of gaining like 150 followers because Don mentioned me on his
Oh,
live.
well-
So,
That just happened to me.
yeah, exactly.
I was like, Don,
exactly.
I haven't had anything. Come on, guys.
Sorry.
No, I
can
have to
tag
actually
you now, but-
use TikTok to gain more. I need to get my own gear.
I mean, you said that, not me. But like, listen, if a right-wing troll wants to call me out on YouTube, I'm going to completely subvert their negativity and be like, here's a bunch of other actual experts that are actually like
Yeah, I saw the
knowledgeable.
expert.
I mean, just like,
Yeah.
come on.
Yeah,
So yeah, always
exactly.
want to spread the love.
It's fun. Awesome. Well, so thanks. I hope we'll look forward to continuing to connect with you guys in various ways, and we will continue. Maybe we'll have you guys back on to talk about some more stuff as there's more things coming. Of course, the next teaser apparently,
When the
and
actual
then
teaser comes.
Oh, yeah.
the full trailer, I guess, after Comic-Con, where I think they're going to premiere it, I guess, is what I hear. So anyway, lots to talk about, and that'll be a lot of fun. So thanks, everybody, and we will see you guys. So I won't be broadcasting next week. I'll be away next week, but I'll be back the week after that for the pre-Comic-Con episode there. So thanks, everybody. See you guys later. Bye now.
Hi, everybody.
Night.
All right.
Yeah.
Bye.